Hey guys, graduate sports therapist Ollie here at Motion S&F, and today we're going to be going through 15 different pull-up variations to help strengthen the back and avoid injury around the rotator cuffs, the rhomboids and the facet joints in the upper thoracic spine. So we're going to be going through these 15 different variations from beginner level up to more advanced level. And as I said before, there's a couple of key goals of this session that we're going to be going through today. So there's avoiding injury, number one. Number two, strengthening it through the back, the bicep. Majority of our strength is going to be coming through our posterior chain, as well as our core as well. And number three is increasing the mobility through our spine, particularly our thoracic spine, but it's also going to help to increase mobility through the spine in general. So before we can even get onto the pull-up bar, we need to master our Australian pull-ups. Either using some parallel dip bars, as we've got here, or a low straight bar in which we can pull up towards our chest. And the key with this is we're going to start to strengthen and stabilize around our scapula and around the rotator cuff and rhomboid muscles that connect around it. Okay, and that's what's going to give us that generating force to be able to pull ourselves up on the pull-up bar, and that is essential when it comes to doing pull-ups with correct form and not increasing your risk of injury by forcing it through the shoulder joint. So we have our beginner's range, which is going to be our standard, not wide, but about shoulder width grip. So doing it with the parallel bars, we're going to have to do it with our arms slightly externally rotate through the shoulder joint. If you have a straight bar, we can grip it like that. Okay, and this is going to particularly work around the scapula, so those rotator cuff muscles, which is going to help to contract the scapula, which, as I said before, is going to help us to go up above the pull-up bar. Following our standard grip, we need to go onto our Australian chin-ups, which is we're going to do an underhand grip on the bar, and this is going to load up slightly through the biceps a little more, but it's also going to start to work a little more internally away from the scapulas towards the rhomboids and into the lats in particular. Like all three variations of the Australian pull-up are going to work through the latissimus dorsi while also working around the scapula and the muscles that surround it. But this is just going to load through the biceps a little bit more, and it's going to help you slightly more with that chin up. So that underhand grip pull-up. Final of the three grips on the Australian pull-up is we're going to do an overhand close grip Australian pull-up. The reason for this is because we want to start working inwards, away from the scapulas, more into the rhomboids, and that's what's going to help bring our scapulas together. You know, it's easy to hit more externally the outer edges of the scapula when doing your pull-ups, your standard Australian pull-ups, even your chin-ups. But to get into those rhomboids, major and minor, we need to bring the hands in and do a slightly more narrow grip. And that's what's going to help you get into your narrow grip pull-ups and your narrow grip chin-ups as well. So once we've really started to master our Australian pull-ups and we can comfortably get a set of 10 out on the three different grips, we can start to go into our pull-ups. And the most important thing to start with when it comes to doing a pull-up on the bar is to attempt to do a negative. So when I say negative, I mean the contraction is in the eccentric phase of muscular contraction. So what that means is the muscle is lengthening while contracting at the same time rather than shortening. So a concentric phase, for the example of a pull-up, would be the upwards motion. The eccentric phase of a pull-up would be the downwards motion. So we're lengthening the muscle while also contracting. And there is a reason for this. There is a reason that this is important, and that is because most people are more likely to be stronger in the concentric phase of any muscular contraction, whereas it's just as important to be strong in the eccentric phase, so the lengthening phase of a muscular contraction. The reason for this is it's going to stop you from getting muscular strain, so you're less likely to strain the muscle when it's at its full length if you're still strong in that phase of the muscular contraction. The exact same principle applies to our negative chin-ups. So the eccentric phase, it's just as important. Number one, the movement's going to be easier for you if you're just starting to try out your pull-ups and your chin-ups. That upwards phase where you're really having to force it is quite hard. So what we're going to do is jump and lower and lengthen. And start to get used to that movement, start to get used to gripping the bar while loading the muscles at the same time without having to put so much force to force yourself up in the first place. Once our Australian pull-ups and chin-ups seem to be becoming easier and we can comfortably do a set 10, and we're starting to get comfortable on our negative movements as well, so our negative pull-ups and our negative chin-ups, we can start getting into our standard pull-ups and chin-ups. So really, most people find the chin-up easier than the pull-up. The reason for this is because you can load the biceps slightly more with the chin-up, so you're actually working through the biceps quite a lot more when you do a chin-up rather than a pull-up, whereas both are still contracting through the latissimus dorsi, the rhomboids, and the rotator cuff surrounding the scapula just as much as one another. So once we've mastered these initial steps, building up to our standard pull-up and chin-up, so our Australian pull-ups and chin-ups, our negative pull-ups and chin-ups, and then our standard pull-ups and chin-ups, that's when we can start to play around with the more advanced movements, i.e. our muscle-ups, our wide grip pull-ups, our military style pull-ups. There's a wider range of pull-ups. We've got 15 just in this video, and there's way more out there after that. But it is important to try and be comfortably hitting sets of 10 with each of these first few phases before you start to play around with the more advanced versions of the movements, and that is because it's to avoid injury. It's to ensure that you're strong enough in the eccentric phase of the movement, so the lengthening phase on the way down. You're strong enough around the rotator cuffs, in particular around the shoulder. The shoulder is a very complex joint, and it's important to make sure that all the structures surrounding it are equally as strong as one another with no muscle imbalances. And it's also important to make sure you have plenty of mobility through the spine. So that was 15 pull-up and chin-up progressions that are going to help to strengthen your back, that are going to help to avoid injury through your back and your shoulder joints, and it's going to help you to keep mobility throughout your thoracic spine. So thanks for watching, everyone. As usual, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.